I swear, I never thought my quiet neighborhood would turn into a circus overnight. But when I woke up that morning, I saw tents, grills, parked vans, and hundreds of strangers stomping all over my land. And standing in the middle of them was Karen, smiling like she owned the place. She said I had no choice, that the HOA already approved the event behind my back. So I looked at her, looked at the trespassers, and then at my bulls. And that's when I decided, if they wanted chaos, I'd give them chaos. But what happened next even shocked me. Welcome back to HOA Nightmares. My name's Jake. I live on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood in North Carolina. And yeah, I deal with our HOA way more than any sane person should. If you hate HOAs, or you've ever dealt with a crazy one, hit subscribe right now. And in the comments, type BOHOA so they know we're not scared of them. And share this video with that one friend who has also survived HOA madness. Alright, here's what happened. I was standing on my porch, still half awake, trying to understand why my land looked like a county fair gone wrong. Hundreds of people, tents everywhere, kids running around, dogs barking, music blasting, ATVs tearing up my grass like they owned the damn place. And right in the center of all the chaos, Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. Her hair perfectly stiff, her sunglasses oversized, and her smile stretched like she just accomplished world peace. She waved at me, like we were old friends, like this wasn't the single dumbest thing she had ever done. "Good morning, Jake," she yelled. "Isn't it wonderful? The community loves this turnout." I walked toward her, still trying not to explode, still trying to understand how this is even real. "Karen, what the hell is this?" I whispered. She did that fake HOA laugh, the one that sounds like plastic bending. "Oh, Jake, sweetie, don't be dramatic. This is just a temporary community camping night, approved by the HOA board, unanimously." I blinked, slow, because my brain refused to accept the stupidity. "On my land," I said. She shrugged. "You weren't using it, so we figured why not benefit the neighborhood." I swear my jaw locked. I swear I could feel smoke coming out of my ears. Some teenage kid walked by holding my garden hose, spraying his friends like it was a water park. A random dude was dragging a cooler across my driveway, scratching the cement, while shouting about beer. Then I saw my bulls, 2 of them, pacing, snorting, not happy at all. I built that land for them, for peace, for space, for safety, and now it was a festival ground, because Karen decided to benefit the community. I asked again, slow, dangerous. "Karen, did you really invite 500 people on private land?" She smiled even harder. "You're overreacting. It's just a camping night. And legally, the HOA can use any unmaintained land inside the neighborhood boundary." I laughed, actually laughed, because this woman, this suburban tyrant, this queen of petty rules and passive-aggressive notes, had finally crossed a line so insane, so unbelievable, that my anger turned into pure comedy. "Unmaintained," I said. "You fined me last month for mowing it too early." Her smile twitched, for half a second, but she recovered, clipped, sharp. "Jake, this is happening. So relax. Relax." She told me to relax, while 500 strangers peed on my fence. I walked away from her, because if I didn't, I might have thrown her into one of the tents. I went to the barn, leaned on the gate, and watched my bulls pace, their tails whipping, their muscles tight. They were confused, annoyed, threatened, and honestly, so was I. That's when one of the campers, a big guy, shirtless, sunburned, walked up to the fence and started tossing chips at the bulls, laughing like a drunk idiot. My bulls charged the gate. The guy screamed, jumped back, and fell on his ass. People nearby laughed at him. Karen rushed over, yelling at me, like it was my fault. "Control your animals," she shouted. "They're scaring the guests." I stared at her, silent, dead silent. This woman invaded my land, invited hundreds of strangers, risked injury, risked damage, risked everything, and now she wanted me to control the situation. She pointed her clipboard at me, like a weapon. "If your bulls cause any incident today, I'll personally make sure the HOA fines you for every dollar." Every single word felt like fire. I looked at her, looked at the campers, looked at the chaos, looked at the bulls, and something inside me snapped. Not anger, not rage, just something colder, something calmer, something dangerous. I walked to the barn gate. "Slow, steady," Karen shouted. "What are you doing?" But I didn't answer. I opened the inner stall, and the bulls stepped forward, snorting, powerful, ready. Karen screamed, "Jake, stop! What are you doing?" I leaned against the gate, looked at her straight in the eyes, and said nothing, because she knew. She finally knew. She pushed me way too far. But the truth is, I wasn't planning to hurt anyone. I wasn't planning to let them loose. Not yet. I just wanted her to feel it. That cold flash of fear. That moment where she finally realized she didn't control everything. And for the first time in years, Karen was silent. But the campers weren't. They were watching. Some cheering. Some filming. Some yelling stupid stuff like, "Let the bulls run." I swear the energy shifted. Like the whole place was seconds away from chaos. And all I could think was, this is going to end bad. For someone. Maybe for Karen. Maybe for me. Maybe for all of us. But I want to know something. If someone invited 500 strangers onto your land, what would you do first? Karen was still screaming at me. Her face red. Her hair shaking. Her finger waving like she was conducting an angry orchestra. And the campers behind her. Some were laughing. Some filming. Some yelling stupid things like, "Let the bulls free, cowboy." Like this was a comedy show. Like my land was their playground. But I stayed silent. Because sometimes, silence scares people more than shouting ever could. I kept my hand on the stall gate. Not opening it. Not closing it. Just resting there. Letting Karen's imagination destroy her own confidence. And it worked. Her eyes kept jumping between me, my bulls, and the crowd. She wasn't worried about the campers. She wasn't worried about the chaos. She was worried about one thing only: losing control. HOA Karens don't fear accidents, or danger, or consequences. They only fear not being obeyed. "Jake, listen to me," she said. But now her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't powerful. It cracked, like a shaky branch in the wind. "You cannot threaten the community like this. This is a violation that you created," I said quietly. "You put 500 strangers on private property." She flinched. Maybe because of my tone. Maybe because deep down she knew she messed up. But Karen was the type who would rather double down than admit a single mistake. "I already told you. The HOA approved this event. This land isn't officially registered as livestock housing. So technically," I stepped closer, close enough for her to see I wasn't playing games. "You think a technicality lets you steal my land?" She swallowed. You ever seen someone swallow guilt? It looks different. It looks heavier. The noise behind us grew. Kids screaming. Dogs running loose. Campers arguing over tent space. Two men yelling over a grill. Someone driving a quad bike dangerously close to the bulls. My land felt like a living nightmare. A man approached us holding a beer. "Hey cowboy," he shouted. "You got more space deeper in the field? My boys want to park their RV. HOA chick said it's all free to use." Karen smiled stiffly. Fake. Forced. See. People are enjoying the event. I wanted to laugh again. Not out of humor, but disbelief. This woman set off a chain reaction of chaos. And somehow, she still believed she was right. Another camper ran by. Hey! Somebody's kid fell into the mud pit. Someone else yelled. Where's the bathroom? Someone screamed. My dog is chasing a bull. Karen's smile twitched. Her perfect HOA mask cracking faster. Jake, please, can you control your animals? My animals, I said. You're the one who turned their land into a circus. Her eyes went wide. Because she knew the truth. But she would never say it. The bulls snorted behind me. Loud, deep, powerful. The crowd stepped back. Nervous. And the more nervous they got, the more nervous the bulls became. And bulls don't handle nerves well. A kid threw something. I think a juice pouch. And it hit one of my bulls square on the nose. The bull stomped. Hard. The ground shaking under us. People gasped. Some cheered. Idiots. Karen panicked. Jake, handle this now. I am ordering you as HOA president. I turned. Slowly. Looked her dead in the face. You don't get to order me on my own land. She froze. Actually froze. 'Cause this moment was new for her. 4 years she used rules. Letters. Fines. Threats. Fake smiles. Board meetings. Intimidation. But now none of that mattered. Out here. On real land. On real dirt. With real animals. Her power didn't mean anything. She looked around. Like she was searching for backup. For someone to defend her authority. But the campers didn't care. The bulls didn't care. My land didn't care. And I sure as hell didn't care. She whispered. Jake, don't do anything stupid. Karen, I said. I'm not the one who brought 500 people next to 2,000 pounds of muscle and horns. She stepped back. Shaking now. Her confidence was gone. Stripped. Shattered. And for one moment, I saw fear. Not fear of bulls. Not fear of danger. Fear of accountability. Then, without warning, a loud scream ripped across the field. Everyone turned. A group of kids had climbed the bull fence, hanging off the rails like it was a jungle gym, swinging, laughing, thinking it was all fun. And the bulls ran toward them, fast. I sprinted, faster than I ever ran. Karen screamed behind me. Campers yelled. Someone dropped a grill. Someone else tripped and rolled down a hill. The bulls reached the fence, just as I grabbed the kids by the shirts and yanked them down. The fence shook. The bulls slammed into it. One rail cracked. Karen shrieked. This is out of control. You need to stop this. I spun around, breathing hard. No, Karen. You need to stop this. This is your mess. Your event. Your trespassers. Your responsibility. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, because she knew. She created a disaster, and she had no idea how to fix it. I took a deep breath, looked at the bulls, looked at the torn-up grass, the tents, the chaos, the screaming kids, the terrified families, and the angry campers, and I decided right there. This ends today, not tomorrow, not at the HOA board, not in a meeting. Today, before someone gets killed. But what I did next, even I didn't expect, because I didn't just end the event. I ended something much bigger, and Karen didn't see it coming. If you were in my place, would you shut the whole event down right now, or make Karen pay first? The bulls were still slamming the fence, their hooves pounding, their breath hot and angry, snorts blasting through the air like warning shots. The kids I pulled down were crying, one holding his elbow, one shaking so hard he couldn't speak. And all around me, the campers were finally, realizing this wasn't a backyard barbecue. This was real land, with real danger, and real consequences. Karen rushed toward me, her voice breaking. Jake, we need to calm everyone. Just do something. Do something. I'd been doing something since sunrise, while she'd been barking orders like she was running a theme park. I turned to her. Slow. Steady. Each word sharp enough to cut rope. You started a wildfire, Karen. I'm just putting it out. She opened her mouth. But before she could argue, a man from the crowd yelled, "Hey! One of the bulls is pushing through the fence." Everyone spun toward the noise. And they weren't wrong. One of my big boys, Ranger, had hooked his horn under a loose rail, lifting it, bending it, testing it. Campers screamed. People ran. Kids tripped. Dogs barked. Tents collapsed. And the whole event turned from chaos into pure panic. And Karen, she completely unraveled. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled. Her voice cracked into a high-pitched stutter. This is... Jake, you must, why aren't you? Because she still didn't understand. You can't control land with HOA rules. You control land with respect, with caution, with knowing when nature is done being polite. I stepped toward her, close enough that she could feel every ounce of seriousness in my voice. You want this event shut down? She nodded rapidly, too rapidly, like a broken toy. Why, yes. Immediately. Shut it down now. I raised an eyebrow. You're asking me to end your HOA-approved community celebration? Her face twisted, because she knew I was right. Knew she'd lose face. Knew this was her failure. But fear beat pride. And fear was winning hard. Yes, she squeaked. Yes, I am. Please. That was all the permission I needed. I lifted my hand, put 2 fingers in my mouth, and blew the sharpest whistle I had. The bulls reacted instantly. They knew that whistle. They'd been trained for it. Not for attack. Not for aggression. But for something else. Something everyone there misunderstood. But Karen misunderstood the most. They stepped back, snorting, stomping, but they backed off. And the campers, they froze, silent, watching me like I was speaking some ancient animal language. I grabbed a rope, swung it over my shoulder, and walked straight into the middle of the field. I didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't threaten. I just spoke louder than the chaos. Listen up. This event is over. Back up. And get off my land. A ripple moved through the crowd. Shock, confusion, relief, anger, a mix of everything. Someone shouted, "You can't kick out 500 people by yourself." I smiled, a cold smile, the kind you give someone who doesn't understand the situation they're in. I'm not kicking anyone out. I pointed toward Ranger and the others, still pacing, still agitated, still ready to snap if another kid threw something at them. They are. The message landed, hard, fast, and dangerously clear. People started scrambling, grabbing tents, coolers, grills, chairs, kids, dogs, everything. But the biggest surprise wasn't the crowd. It was Karen. She grabbed my arm, desperate, panicked, her voice shaking. "Jake, wait. You can't make them leave like this. I'll get in trouble. Everyone will blame me, please." I pulled my arm free. Slow. Controlled. Good. They should. She stared at me, horrified, like I'd slapped her, because no one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her HOA board. Not her neighbors. Not her committees. Not her husband. Not anyone. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "Karen, you did this to yourself." Her knees buckled, just for a second, just long enough to see the crack in her armor widen. I walked past her, heading toward the bulls, toward the torn-up field, toward the mess I didn't create, but now had to clean. But then, a roar erupted behind me. Not from the bulls. Not from the campers. From engines. Dozens of engines. I turned, and my stomach dropped. A line of lifted trucks, and SUVs, and off-road vehicles, pulled up along the ridge, revving loudly, their drivers standing up through the sunroofs, holding beers, cheering like they were arriving at a stadium. One man yelled, "We're here for the HOA campout. Where do we park?" And Karen, the queen of control, the master of HOA rules, the dictator of neighborhood order, fell apart completely. Her voice cracked into a scream. "No, no, the event is cancelled. Turn around. Turn around." But they didn't turn around. They kept coming. And I realized something in that moment. Something cold. Something sharp. Something dangerous. This wasn't an event anymore. This was a stampede. Of people. Of vehicles. Of chaos. And it wasn't stopping. Not unless I forced it to. And forcing it meant doing something big. Something bold. Something no one would forget. Especially Karen. Because if I didn't end this now, someone was getting hurt. A kid. A camper. A driver. Or a bull. So I grabbed the rope tighter. Took a deep breath. And made the decision that changed everything. And what I did next. Karen would talk about it. For years. In every meeting. Every complaint. Every argument. Because I didn't just end the event. I ended her power. The rumble of engines didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, a rolling wall of metal, dust, and adrenaline. I could feel the ground tremble beneath my boots as dozens of trucks and SUVs barreled toward the field, oblivious to the chaos already unfolding. Campers froze, staring wide-eyed at the incoming vehicles. Kids clung to their parents, dogs barked, and the bull snorted, sensing the incoming threat. Ranger and the other bull were now fully alert, their muscles tensing as if to warn the intruders, "This is my territory." Karen's screams pierced through the air like a broken siren. "No. The event is cancelled. Turn around. Everyone, turn around." Her red blouse was streaked with dust, her hair wild, her perfect HOA composure shattered beyond repair. I stepped forward, rope coiled over my shoulder, boots digging into the dirt, eyes scanning the approaching vehicles. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't wave my hands. I just exuded the kind of calm authority you earn when you live on land like this, when every animal, every inch of earth, and every hazard is your responsibility. The trucks kept coming, unaware. The drivers thought they were part of some grand festival, unaware that the cowboy in the field had full control over the bulls behind him. I let the silence stretch, let the tension build. One vehicle swerved dangerously close to the fence, and Ranger's ears twitched. The bull shifted, his hooves digging into the ground. Dust kicked up from his movements, and every camper froze again. I caught Karen's eye, her panic mirrored everyone else's, but this time there was no pleading, no begging. She was completely powerless. I lifted the rope, gave it a sharp toss toward the first bull. Ranger's head snapped in my direction, obeying the trained signal instantly. The second bull followed suit. My eyes didn't leave the oncoming vehicles. I needed them to see me, to understand that while I didn't want to hurt anyone, I would if someone crossed the line. "Move back! Everyone move back!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the rumble of engines. But the vehicles didn't stop. Some drivers laughed, thinking it was part of the spectacle. Others yelled, pointing at the bulls like they were at some rodeo show. And then I saw it. A kid had broken free from his parents' grasp, running straight toward the ridge where the trucks were climbing. My stomach dropped. Without thinking, I sprinted, cutting the kid off, grabbing him by the collar of his hoodie. The bull fence was behind me, slamming against the posts, dust and debris flying everywhere. "Get down!" I yelled, shoving the kid behind a safe patch of dirt. Karen's scream followed me, sharp and frantic. "Jake, this is out of control. Somebody will die. Someone will if they don't leave now." I shot back, my voice steady but fierce. The chaos had reached a fever pitch. The campers, now realizing the severity of the situation, began scrambling to pack up tents and belongings. Cooler boxes tumbled down slight inclines, chairs snapped under hurried hands, and dogs yipped and barked in fear. The bulls, sensing the shift in energy, paced in tighter circles, muscles rippling, nostrils flaring. Ranger lowered his head, staring directly at the nearest vehicle like a linebacker sizing up a quarterback. Karen tried to regain control. She ran toward a group of campers, waving her arms, shouting rules and schedules, HOA-approved permits, and promises of community safety. Her voice cracked with panic. It was pitiful to watch. I took a deep breath and moved between Karen and the field. "Karen," I said calmly, almost conversationally, "you've lost control. These people aren't listening to you. They never were. And now they're in danger." Her face twisted in disbelief. I organized this. You organized chaos," I interrupted. "And now it's your responsibility to fix it. But if you won't, I will. On my land. On my terms." Her eyes darted toward the approaching trucks again. She realized I meant it. Not a bluff, not a threat, but fact. I wasn't asking for respect. I was demanding compliance, not from her, but from anyone who could still listen. I whistled sharply. Ranger responded immediately, backing toward me, horn lowering, muscles coiled but controlled. The second bull mirrored him. The campers and drivers, seeing the bull's sheer size and power, finally hesitated. The realization hit them: this was no stunt, no joke, no festival attraction. This was reality. Karen's voice dropped into a whisper. "Jake, please, don't hurt anyone." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to protect them from this." I gestured to the field, the chaos, the approaching vehicles, the collapsing tents, and the screaming campers. It worked. Slowly, grudgingly, the first few vehicles began to reverse, their drivers finally realizing they had misjudged the situation. Others followed. The dust settled slightly, leaving only the echoes of engines and the soft snorts of the bulls. The campers packed with more order now, parents grabbing children, securing dogs, breaking down tents efficiently. The field, though torn and trampled, began to calm under my gaze. Ranger and the other bull relaxed slightly, still alert but obedient. Karen sank to her knees in the dirt, staring at the chaos she created. Her hands trembled. Her red blouse was torn in spots, dust streaking her hair and face. The power she had wielded in HOA meetings was gone, evaporated by real land, real animals, and real consequences. I walked toward her, keeping a respectful distance. "Karen, you need to learn something here. Control isn't about permission slips or committees. It's about respect. Respect for others. Respect for property. Respect for consequences." She nodded weakly, not out of understanding yet, but from the sheer exhaustion of facing a situation she couldn't manipulate. I looked out over the field. Tents collapsed. Coolers overturned. Tire tracks gouged into the grass. A few campers waved sheepishly, muttering apologies as they left. And somewhere in the chaos, I knew this moment would echo through Karen's HOA meetings for months, maybe years. This wasn't about bulls. It wasn't about campers. It was about boundaries. About respect. About the consequences of ignoring the rules of reality for the illusion of control. I finally lowered the rope. Ranger and the other bull followed, calmer now, no longer a threat but a reminder of why boundaries mattered. Karen stayed on the ground, silent. And for the first time, I saw her not as an HOA tyrant, not as an enemy, but as someone who needed to understand what real accountability looked like. And I walked away, knowing that while the field would need repair, the lesson had been delivered in a way no meeting, no letter, and no committee ever could. For a brief moment, silence fell over the land. The sun reflected off the dust, the flattened grass, and the scattered tents. And I realized something crucial. Power is fleeting. Respect is earned. And chaos can be controlled, but only when someone is willing to face it, fully, without fear. Karen would remember this day. Not because she liked it. Not because she enjoyed it. But because she had lost, and real life doesn't care about HOA rules. And as I watched her struggle to stand, dusting herself off, I couldn't help but think, some lessons are harsh, but necessary. If you were in Jake's place, would you have handled the arriving vehicles the same way, or would you have tried another method to stop the chaos? Comment below what you would have done. The dust settled, but the tension lingered, hanging in the air like smoke from a campfire no one dared touch. Ranger and the other bull grazed cautiously, their eyes scanning the remnants of tents and the scattered belongings of 500 campers. They had calmed, but the energy of the day still vibrated through the earth beneath my boots. Karen struggled to her feet, brushing dust from her torn red blouse. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. She looked at me with a mix of fear, frustration, and the faintest hint of grudging respect. "Jake, this was unnecessary," she stammered. I shook my head slowly. "Unnecessary? Karen, you put 500 people, 2,000 pounds of bulls, and chaos on my property. This was inevitable." She swallowed, clearly realizing the truth of it. Her eyes darted across the field, flattened tents, overturned coolers, mud tracks, and exhausted campers gathering what was left of their belongings. I thought I was doing something good for the community," she said softly, as if trying to convince herself more than me. "Good intentions don't overwrite reality," I said. "You can't just invade someone else's land and expect everything to work out without consequences." The campers were mostly gone now, some lingering to apologize, others retreating silently, shame written across their faces. A few teenagers lingered, whispering among themselves, shooting glances at the bulls as if hoping to capture the story of the day for social media. But the real story wasn't their filming, it was the lesson Karen was about to carry home. I walked over to the fence, inspecting the damage. One rail was completely broken, another was splintered. Ranger nudged me with his massive head, as if reminding me that the work wasn't just about managing people, it was also about tending to the land and the animals who lived on it. Karen followed me hesitantly. "Jake, what are you going to do now? With everything?" I looked out over the field. The sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows that stretched across flattened grass and overturned coolers. "Now," I said. "Now we fix it. We make sure no one was hurt beyond the bruises and scares. And we make sure this never happens again." She flinched at the firmness in my voice. You're not going to call the cops?" I shook my head. "No. The lesson is enough. Legal action doesn't teach respect. It just creates resentment. You needed to see the consequences firsthand, and now you have." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked around, eyes landing on Ranger and the other bull, realizing the true magnitude of what had almost happened. They could have hurt someone," she whispered. "They almost did," I said. "And that's why boundaries matter, Karen. This land, these animals, this environment, it's not a playground. You don't get to bring chaos here just because you have a title or a permit." She nodded slowly, visibly processing the weight of the day. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor, a glimpse of humility that HOA boards and neighborhood meetings had never extracted from her. The campers finally started leaving in earnest, hauling away tents and belongings, muttering apologies. Some parents looked relieved, others embarrassed, but all understood, now, that they had been part of a near disaster. I watched as one family carefully led their child away, hand in hand, the kid glancing back at the bulls as if promising never to forget the lesson. I turned back to Karen. "You need to report to your HOA about this, and take full responsibility for what you allowed to happen here. I don't want another event, another encroachment. Ever." Her shoulders slumped. I understand," she said softly. It wasn't pride in her words, it was surrender. Acceptance. I nodded, satisfied that at least part of the message had been received. Then I walked toward Ranger, scratching his head behind the ears. "Good job, boy. You kept your cool when it counted." Ranger snorted, stepping closer and nudging my hand with his massive head. Karen stayed a few feet behind, silent, watching the interaction. She seemed unsure how to respond, her usual verbal defenses absent. The air was heavy with tension, but also a strange sense of resolution. I glanced over the field one last time. The sun had dipped closer to the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the land. The chaos of the day had been intense, frightening, and utterly humbling for everyone involved. But the lesson had been clear: real control isn't about rules or fear. It's about respect, understanding, and responsibility. Karen finally spoke again, her voice quieter, more reflective. "Jake, I won't forget this. I promise. I nodded. Good. That's all I ask. The field was mostly empty now, the campers long gone, the bulls calm, the fence damaged but standing. I breathed in the cool evening air, the smell of dust and trampled grass lingering, a reminder of what had transpired. And though the day had been exhausting, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Chaos had been met with order, disrespect had been met with consequence, and most importantly, lessons had been learned. Karen stood there a moment longer, then turned slowly, finally leaving the field. I watched her go, knowing that this experience would stay with her far longer than any HOA meeting ever could. I turned to Ranger, the last rays of sunlight glinting off his horns. Let's get back to the barn, boy. We've earned a quiet evening after this. Ranger snorted softly, nudging me again as if to agree. And as we walked back across the field, the wind picking up and carrying away the remnants of chaos, I realized something important. Power without responsibility is a dangerous thing. Authority without understanding is worthless. And sometimes, to teach a lesson, you have to let the storm come, and then guide it to its end. Today, the storm was over. And for the first time, Karen understood that her control had limits, limits she couldn't ignore. If you were Jake, would you have let Karen leave without further consequences, or would you have taken additional steps to ensure she never tried something like this again? Comment below with what you would do. The sun had set completely, leaving long shadows stretching across the field. The air was cooler now, but the tension lingered like a shadow of the chaos earlier. Ranger and the other bull grazed quietly, alert but calm, their massive bodies moving with slow, deliberate steps across the flattened grass. The once noisy field now carried an eerie silence, interrupted only by the soft footsteps of campers leaving and the occasional snort of a bull. Karen remained near the edge of the field, standing still, red blouse dusty and torn, hair messy, shoulders slumped. She didn't speak. She didn't try to intervene. Her face reflected exhaustion and something deeper, an understanding of the real cost of control when it is misused. I watched her, knowing the day's lessons were sinking in. I began walking toward the barn, Ranger following close behind. The other bull trailed a few steps behind, still alert. The field looked like a battlefield, flattened tents, overturned coolers, muddy tracks, and discarded belongings everywhere, but beneath the chaos was a sense of order returning. The lesson had been delivered, and now it was time to restore normalcy. Karen finally spoke, her voice low and shaky. Jake, what will you do with the land now? With everything? I didn't answer immediately. I scanned the field, the bulls, the scattered tents. My mind weighed the options carefully. This wasn't just about controlling chaos, it was about preventing it from happening again. The land will stay as it is, I said finally. Protected. My rules. My boundaries. Anyone who wants to visit, respect them. Anyone who doesn't, well, they'll learn the hard way. Her eyes widened. You won't. I mean, you could have called the authorities, filed complaints. You could. I don't need to, I interrupted calmly. The field and the bulls are the authority here. They enforce rules faster than any committee or HOA meeting ever could. Her lips pressed together. She looked away, perhaps embarrassed or maybe realizing that her usual tricks, permits, threats, and regulations didn't matter here. Not when real life, real animals, and real consequences existed. The last campers were finally leaving, some apologizing quietly, others avoiding eye contact as they loaded the last of their gear into trucks and SUVs. The chaos had subsided, but I could still see the shock lingering on their faces. Today had been a lesson none of them would forget. I walked closer to Karen. You need to understand something, I said firmly. Authority without responsibility is meaningless. Power without respect is dangerous. You can have a title, you can have rules, but if you don't understand the consequences of your actions, you will always lose. She nodded slowly. It wasn't agreement, it wasn't even acceptance fully, but it was acknowledgement. Perhaps the first step toward change. I get it, she whispered. I turned my attention to the bulls. Ranger nudged my shoulder, and the other bull stepped closer, as if sensing the calm after the storm. Their presence reminded me that control wasn't just about yelling or threats, it was about awareness, preparation, and respect. Today had been about teaching a lesson, yes, but also about protecting what was mine and keeping everyone safe. Karen stayed a few steps behind, silent. I could see her analyzing, reflecting, probably replaying the events in her mind, realizing how fragile control really was. She had been stripped of power here, not by force, but by reality itself, the unpredictability of animals, the seriousness of trespassing, and the impossibility of commanding respect without understanding it. I guided Ranger toward the barn. The bull followed willingly. Karen watched, still processing, still quiet. I could tell she was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. And good. Maybe that exhaustion would be enough to make her remember today, to rethink her next actions, to approach people, property, and authority with a bit more care. "Jake," Karen said after a pause. Do you hate me now?" I stopped and looked back at her. My expression was calm, steady. "No, Karen. I don't hate you. I just wish you understood responsibility before it became chaos." Her eyes softened slightly, a glimmer of humility. Maybe I do now," she admitted quietly. I nodded. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." The night settled in over the ranch, the cool breeze moving through the flattened grass. The field, though scarred, felt alive again, peaceful. Ranger lowered his head, grazing, and the other bull followed. I took a deep breath, feeling a rare sense of accomplishment. The chaos had been controlled, lessons had been delivered, and boundaries reinforced. Karen lingered a moment longer, then turned to leave, quieter than before, perhaps humbled, perhaps thoughtful. I watched her go, knowing that today had changed her perception, if not completely, then at least enough that she would think twice before imposing authority recklessly again. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sounds of the night, the wind rustling through grass, distant calls of wildlife, and the soft snorts of the bulls. The field was quiet now, the storm of the day fading, leaving only the memory of a lesson learned. And I realized something important. Respect can't be demanded. Lessons can't be enforced with authority alone. Sometimes, the world itself, through chaos and consequence, teaches the hardest lessons, but also the ones that stick. I patted Ranger's massive head one last time and whispered, "Good work today, boy. Let's keep it that way." The night embraced the field, calm, quiet, and alert. The lessons were etched into every footprint, every flattened tent, every careful step of the campers who had witnessed the storm. And though Karen had left, the echo of today's events would remain with her forever. If you were in Jake's place, would you have let Karen leave without facing further consequences, or would you have made her experience an additional consequence to ensure she truly learned the lesson? Share what you would do and why. The field was quiet now. The sun had completely disappeared below the horizon, leaving the ranch bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The dust from the day's chaos still lingered, swirling lightly in the cool evening breeze. Ranger and the other bull moved slowly across the flattened grass, muscles relaxed, tails swishing lazily. Their breathing was steady, calm, almost like the entire land itself was exhaling, finally at peace. I walked toward the barn, Ranger following close behind, the other bull trailing a few paces back. Each step was deliberate, measured, a stark contrast to the chaos that had erupted only hours before. I glanced back at the field one last time. Flattened tents, overturned coolers, muddy footprints, everything bore the marks of the day's storm. But amid the mess, there was clarity. The lesson had been taught, the boundaries enforced, and respect restored. Karen stood near the edge of the field, dust clinging to her red blouse and tangled hair falling across her face. She hadn't approached, hadn't spoken. Her shoulders were slumped, her posture defeated. She was silent, but her eyes told the story. For the first time, she seemed to understand the weight of what she had done. I stopped a few feet from her and spoke calmly. "Karen, today was not about punishing you. It was about showing you the consequences of disregarding boundaries and respect. You now know that control isn't given, it's earned, and that authority without understanding is meaningless." She looked at me, eyes wide, voice soft. I get it now, Jake. I really do. I'll never do this again." I nodded slowly. "Good. That's all I needed to hear. Let this be the last time anyone thinks they can turn this land into their playground without permission or consideration." Karen stayed silent a moment longer, then turned and walked away, head bowed, leaving the field behind. The quietness that followed her departure was different than the eerie calm earlier. It felt earned, deserved, and final. I returned to Ranger and the other bull, inspecting them for any signs of distress. Both were calm, steady, and unharmed. The storm had tested them, and me, and now we all stood resilient, intact, and wiser. I patted Ranger's massive head and muttered, "We did good today, boy." Ranger snorted softly, nudging my hand with his enormous muzzle. The field itself seemed to breathe. The flattened grass, the overturned coolers, the scattered debris, all remnants of chaos, were also proof of boundaries and lessons. Nature had enforced its rules, just as humans would in a civilized world. But on this land, reality was absolute. Respect had to be shown, or consequences were unavoidable. I walked to the far side of the field where the remaining campers had left a few belongings behind. I picked up a small cooler, brushing dirt from the lid, placing it neatly near the barn for retrieval. Each action was slow, purposeful, restoring order after the storm. It wasn't just the land that needed care, it was also the people who had come here, knowingly or unknowingly, into danger. A few campers who had lingered behind approached me cautiously. Their faces were pale, eyes wide, but they didn't speak immediately. Finally, one young man stepped forward, voice shaky. "Mr. I just want to say, thank you. We didn't realize how dangerous it could have been." "I won't forget this." I nodded. "Good. That's exactly the lesson I hoped everyone would take away. Respect land. Respect animals. Respect boundaries. Do not assume control you do not have." He nodded quickly, a mixture of relief and awe in his eyes, before running to catch up with his group. Others followed silently, leaving the field for the night, the lesson settling into their minds like dust into soil. I returned to the barn once more, checking gates and fences, making sure the bulls were secure and the perimeter intact. The calm night had a different weight, one of reflection, relief, and quiet triumph. I finally leaned against the barn door, taking a deep breath. Today had been intense, exhausting, and harrowing. But it had been necessary. Karen's HOA influence would never touch this land again. The lesson had been unforgettable, indelible, and unyielding. No rules, no letters, no committees could ever replace what had been learned today. Reality had spoken. And for the first time, Karen had truly listened. The bulls stood quietly, their shadows stretching long across the field in the moonlight. Ranger nudged me once more, reminding me that life on this land was ongoing. Respect, vigilance, and understanding were daily necessities. Chaos could erupt again, but so could order. As I finally closed the barn doors, I looked back at the field one last time. The stars reflected in the dust particles, shimmering like tiny reminders of the day's lessons. Boundaries had been enforced. Respect had been earned. Chaos had been met with calm authority. And the land, as always, had endured. I turned toward the house, the bulls following slowly behind, the night quiet except for the soft sounds of wind and distant wildlife. Karen was gone, the campers were gone, and the field rested, scarred but wiser. And in that quiet, I felt the satisfaction of a day completed, a storm survived, and a lesson delivered beyond the reach of mere words or authority. The night settled fully over the ranch, and the world seemed at peace, for now. But I knew that tomorrow, life would continue, as it always did, with the same balance of respect, responsibility, and the quiet power of living. After everything that happened, would you have let Karen walk away after today, or would you have enforced an additional consequence to ensure she truly understood the lesson? Explain what you would do.